H.R. 1486, a bill to impose sanctions with respect to economic or industrial espionage by foreign adversarial companies and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Mast, and the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. will each 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Florida.
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and to include extraneous material on this measure.
Without objection.
I also ask unanimous consent to introduce into the record exchanges of letters with other committees of referral on this bill.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield myself as much time as I may consume. Madam Speaker, I rise in support for H.R. 1486, the Economic Espionage Prevention Act, introduced by my colleague from Georgia, Mr. McCormick. The Chinese Communist Party is working to undermine America's interests around the world and is the global supplier of America's adversaries. As President Trump and his administration are working tirelessly to finally bring an end to the war in Ukraine, the CCP continues to stoke global chaos by providing massive amounts of industrial and economic support to Russia. In fact, our State Department assessed that in the second half of 2023 alone, China supported the transfer of nearly $300 million worth of semiconductors to Russia, including for use in missiles and drones. The CCP's actions are blatant violations of U.S. export controls and detrimental to our ongoing peace efforts. China's economic and industrial support for Russia is a critical lifeline for the Russian military. This is why it is critical that Congress pass the Economic Espionage Prevention Act. This bill will provide important sanctions authorities for cutting off the CCP's illegal industrial supply chains to America's adversaries. Enhancing U.S. export control enforcement with economic sanctions will help shut down China's massive support for Russia's defense industrial base. This bill also enhances Congressman's visibility into this illicit supply chain by requiring the State Department to issue a report identifying these individuals and entities who are supporting the Russian defense industrial base. The CCP is relentlessly undermining President Trump's efforts to bring an end to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The Chinese companies illegally supplying Russia in violation of U.S. export controls must be subjected to the full weight of our sanctions regime. The bill ensures that the CCP and the world understand that supplying America's adversaries comes with a very severe cost. I urge my colleagues to support this important bill, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield myself as much time as I may consume. Madam Speaker, I rise in support of H.R. 1486. This is legislation that authorizes sanctions against any person or entity that provides material support for Russia's military and industrial defense base. We know that Russia uses missiles, drones, planes, and rocket launchers to wreak havoc on Ukrainian cities and citizens. They do this to overthrow the government, to end democracy in Ukraine, and to seize Ukrainians' territory, to reconstitute a new Soviet Union, or at least a Soviet-like sphere of influence. But Ukrainians have bravely stood up to this unprovoked, unlawful aggression. The Ukrainian military has bravely fought back against the much larger Russian military and has repelled this invasion for years. The United States and its partners and allies have been critical to the defense of Ukraine, and Congress has been instrumental in the support we have provided. As Russia continues to suffer heavy losses and economic hardship from waging this illegal invasion, it has turned to China and even Iran and North Korea for support. We absolutely should be bolstering sanctions not just on Russia's warmongering, but also on its enablers. China has played a crucial role in supporting Russia. Though they have not provided overt military support, they are continuing to provide dual-use goods like industrial tools and semiconductors. At a minimum, given its tendencies to appease Russia rather than pressuring it, the Trump administration must maintain the current posture of deterrence with the existing tools it already has. But the better approach is for this administration to also use the additional tools offered by this legislation to deter further PRC shipments of dual-use goods to Russia. Let me say also, I appreciate Representative McCormick and Chairman Mast for negotiating further changes to this bill last week. I appreciate the bipartisan spirit that went into this legislation and for the work that both Ranking Member Meeks and his team has done on this legislation. I encourage my colleagues to join in supporting this measure, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Florida is now recognized.
Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Georgia, the sponsor of this legislation, Mr. McCormick.
Gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Chairman Mast. Thank you to the minority party for supporting this bill. Since illegally invading Ukraine, the Russian Federation has become reliant on the People's Republic of China for its supply of semiconductors and other critical dual-use technologies. The State Department notified Congress last year that the PRC exports of semiconductors significantly increased in 2023 compared to pre-invasion levels. These semiconductors are critical keys aspects to the Russian war effort, including economic and electronic warfare, command and control, and targeting. These components allow Russia to terrorize Ukrainian civilians with ballistic missile strikes as well. The prevalence of U.S. manufacturing equipment in global semiconductor production means nearly all are subject to U.S. export controls if destined for Russia or Belarus. My bill seeks to reduce Russia's access to these semiconductors by authorizing sanctions on any foreign adversaries that materially support Russia's military and intelligence services, violate U.S. export laws, and steal U.S. intellectual property. It further requires a report on whether China is providing significant support to Russia's military and updates existing law to provide greater flexibility to pursue sanctions against China and other foreign adversaries if they violate these export controls. The PRC may publicly claim that they do not provide material support to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, but their continued supply of dual-use technology clearly shows otherwise. Cutting off the supply of semiconductors will seriously hamper the Russian war effort and show the world that we will not allow our adversaries to work together to destroy sovereign nations and undermine the international system. I urge my colleagues to support H.R. 1486, and with that, I yield.
Speaker, I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. No further requests for time, and I am prepared to close at the other side. So, speakers.
Madam Speaker, I have no more speakers.
And I reserve.
All right. Gentleman from Maryland is now
no other
recognized
speakers. I apologize,
close.
Mr. Chairman. I thought you said you had another one. I yield myself as much time as I may need for purposes of closing. Madam Speaker, H.R. 1486 will authorize sanctions on any person or entity that supports Russia's military and defense industrial base. Russia expected to take Kyiv in a matter of days, but it has now been years as brave Ukrainians continue to defend their country and their sovereignty against Russia's illegal invasion. I want to thank my colleague, Representative McCormick, and others for their work on this, as Russia has now had to turn to other nations for material support to continue that invasion, which is why Congress must not only continue our support of Ukraine, but also authorize sanctions on those enabling Russia's war. This is an important bill, and I am proud to support it. I hope we can put forward other legislation like this, including a few bills sponsored by Ranking Member Meeks that have passed with bipartisan support in the past. I urge my colleagues to support this legislation, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. Gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself the balance of my time. In closing, I again want to thank Representative McCormick for his bill, as well as the China Select Committee Chairman, Mr. Molinar, and Representative Baumgartner and Lawler for their work to bring this bill to the floor, to ensure that we finally end China's support for Russia's defense industrial base. It's a great piece of legislation. I urge all members to support H.R. 1486, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 1486 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.